Let's go ahead and get started. We may have a small but mighty group today. We're going to find out. People will be entering in as we move along. So, hey, I want to welcome you to this month's webinar. This is going to be about positioning research and how do you integrate behavioral science into your brand positioning and hopefully, most importantly, your brand positioning research. I want to thank you again for coming. And what I wanted to do was first just start off with a story. And I saw that Tom DeLuca is in the house here, and so Tom may remember this story. But where the story begins is in 2008. I can't believe how long it was, but this is where I had my first taste of brand positioning and brand positioning research, and maybe sometimes how it can go wrong. So in 2008, I was working at Frito-Lay as an insights professional working on different brands, and I was assigned to Sun Chips, the Sun Chips brand. And the person I was taking the Sun Chips brand over from was a friend of mine named Robert, who I actually ended up hiring years later for my company here. And Robert was on the Sun Chips brand. And so as we're transitioning, I'm moving on the brand. He's moving on off the brand. He says, "Hey, Will, I just did this big mega study, and I want to make sure you know about these results." And the results, maybe not surprisingly, was that he said, people buy Sun Chips because they're healthy, but they taste great. They taste great. And you got to reconfirm taste with Sun Chips, because when people kind of think about whole grains, they don't feel like it's going to taste very good. You have to reinforce whole grains and it tastes great. Okay, seems pretty easy, right? So about 6 months later, we're in the brand, and we're starting to hear rumors of a new possible positioning for Sun Chips. Now, this is coming up from the top down. Sun Chips was doing great at the time financially, but we were starting to hear more and more rumors around this idea of moving into the environmental space. And we needed to have an environmental brand in our portfolio. And we're starting to move into the health and wellness space a little bit more. And so there was kind of this edict. We need to start finding our purpose, our environmental purpose from the portfolio. And Sun Chips just makes the perfect brand to do that. So if you've ever been on the brand, you may notice that this has happened where you start just drinking all the Kool-Aid, and you're in the brand and you forget maybe what your customers are looking for, because you just keep hearing about, we're going to move this brand to this new exciting place, and you start drinking the Kool-Aid, and eventually you kind of forget who you are as a researcher, but you also forget who you are as a brand. And so we moved into this environmental space, and I'm going to play a video here for you. Hopefully you will hear it. And I'll tell you the outcome of that in just a second. Hey there. Sorry, Whitney. Just really briefly, the video is basically where Sun Chips moved into the environmental space, and you'll see it on the video as I send it out later on. So as you can tell from that video, everybody, that there wasn't a whole lot of taste in there, and I can remember now Robert saying you have to talk about taste with Sun Chips, because people don't believe that Sun Chips was going to taste very good. But we didn't care. We wanted an environmental brand. We did all this research to show that people really wanted to start buying products that were environmentally focused. And so what did we do as an organization? We created the Sun Chips environmental positioning. The problem with that is that we built positioning around what we wanted as an organization. We built it around ourselves, and this led to a domino effect. What that domino effect was that we started producing as much Sun Chips through solar power, which had some issues, but also we created this very controversial bio bag, or as a compostable packaging. And if you guys don't know much about that, I would encourage you to go to YouTube and look up Sun Chips compostable packaging. It was probably still to this day, one of the worst product launches in PepsiCo's history, maybe up there with Olestra, if you remember that. And basically what we did is we created packaging that was very, very, very loud. So loud that people were using decibel meters and comparing it to a subway train when it enters into a subway. I heard jet engines, but as you can see here, it was up to 95 decibels when you would touch the packaging. It was an incredible failure all around, not just the bag, but the positioning. We didn't take that positioning for very long. And I am going to tell you now, that's right, Jane. I was a part of that initiative. It's so embarrassing now, but at the time I was all in. I'm thinking we're going to be in this environmental brand. We're going to make an impact on the world. And unfortunately, our customers weren't asking us to do that. We were going to force that on to our customers. And it was really, really bad for the business, double-digit loss in share. And it took years to recover if they ever really recovered, because we had a lot of momentum coming on that brand because we were one of the very first snacks that were really healthy for you. And that tasted great. And we walked away from that positioning. And even today, I think there's a little bit of confusion, just my opinion on the Sun Chips brand. So here, the point of it is that we can sometimes make mistakes in brand positioning because we're not thinking through a behavioral science lens. So what I want to do is talk you through that. But first, you may want to know a little bit more about what is brand positioning. This isn't any breakthrough thing. We've been doing brand positioning in brands for many, many years. But brand positioning, just in my world, it's this unique space that a brand will occupy in customers' minds. And that's kind of a more traditional place of what people think about brand positioning. So it's what do you stand for in people's minds? It makes people view a brand in a very unique way. If done right, you're going to do great things. If done wrong, it's not going to be so great for you. Because what's happening is you're going to create these associations of your brand with emotions that are being evoked, certain traits that you want to be known for, and feelings. Now, unfortunately, sometimes these associations, these feelings, these traits are outside of your control if you're a brand. And that's just the reality of it, right? You can have neighbors who hate your brand, or there could be stories in the media that aren't even true, and they could hurt your brand positioning. But the fact of the matter is, vast majority of these things you don't control, but you do control some of them. And what helps with brand positioning is that these associations, they help you stand out from the competition. And we use marketing to build these positive associations. And the theory is that if you have more positive associations, then when that brand comes to mind, then you will have these positive emotions, or your customers will have these positive emotions, and then hopefully they will buy from you. But positive associations do not buy products. Motivated buyers do. Now, these are three iconic brands, some of them in the South. I live here in Dallas, Texas. And these had very positive associations with the vast majority of customers. Borders bookstores. I grew up at Borders. I've read so many books inside of Borders bookstores. Certainly Ringling Brothers and Luby's Cafeteria dominates in the South, Southeast on Sunday afternoons after church. And the fact of the matter is, these businesses are out. They're gone. They're out of business. And I would suggest that a big portion of that is not because people had bad associations with them. It's just that people didn't shop there enough. They stopped buying. Lots of other reasons. I totally get it. My point here is that we want to think about brand positioning as doing two things, not just building positive associations, because you do need that in your brand, but also thinking about your positioning as a way of creating emotional desire to buy. This is where behavioral sciences come into play. So this idea of moving from just differentiation to also motivation. How do we motivate buyers to buy? That's the value that we bring as marketing research professionals. After we leave a brand, is the brand more valuable based upon your insights? And this, I'm going to show you how to do this using behavioral science if you're going to do some brand restaging or new campaigns. So there's going to be 4 steps that you're going to want to think about if you want to integrate behavioral sciences into doing new brand positioning or any communications research. So if you're going to restage your brand in the customer's minds, you want to think through these 4 things. The first thing I want you to think about is identify the behavioral drivers of consideration and choice. Then what I want you to do is consider, how do you connect these drivers to your brand positioning. Then how do you connect your brand positioning to a brand archetype? I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute. And lastly, then connect the brand archetype to your brand marketing. So we're going to do a nice little stepwise path here to get you to a really good place. So why don't we go into this? And first off, step number one is I want you to identify the behavioral drivers of consideration and choice. This is sometimes where I think we fall down as brands, is that we look for needs and we look for unmet needs in the marketplace and maybe some solutions. And really what we want to do is understand how to build deep psychological empathy with our customers. And the way you do that, and if you're on this webinar, you probably know this model by now. If not, there's a book called Marketing to Mindstate. You can learn a lot more about this model, but there's basically 4 different things you're going to want to understand about your customers to understand how to increase consideration as well as choice for your brand. And it comes down to understanding your customers' goals, or kind of what they want, using basic goal theory. After that, you want to understand what motivates them to reach their goals. That's something that we talk about here called motivational psychology. And you're going to find out there's 9 core motivations that drive the vast majority of human behavior. After that, you're going to understand how do they approach the particular decisions when they make category decisions, when they make brand choices. And that's something called regulatory fit theory. And basically all you need to know about that is that people will either be optimistic, where they will seek more gains and more good things in life, or more good outcomes as they're looking for a brand. Or some people will be more cautious and they're going to try to seek and avoid bad things and bad consequences. So they're going to look for brands that can help them avoid pain, if you will. Very simplistic way of thinking about it, but it's easy. Then after that, you're going to want to understand heuristics. This is behavioral economics 101. What are these triggers that people use to make decisions easier? Now, the points I'm going to talk about today really for brand positioning rest in the goals and the motivation side of things. So you're going to want to do research to understand what are people's goals in your category, and what are people's motivations. So we've done lots of webinars on this. If you want to learn more about the research techniques, you should go to my YouTube channel, Mindstate Group, go to my website. There's all sorts of free resources you can do, or you can read to learn about how to do that. But let's just say first, you have figured out what are the goals of your customer as well as their motivations. Next thing we want to do is connect these to brand positioning. So there are many different ways to do brand positioning, or these statements. This is a very traditional way of thinking about brand positioning. If you've done brand positioning in the past, or you've done any kind of work in restaging a brand, this is kind of familiar probably. There's going to be some sort of a kind of a statement that you're going to be trying to hone in on and really trying to understand. And it's generally going to do this. It's going to say, our brand positioning is for our target audience. The brand, whatever brand you're on, is the unique value proposition. What's unique in that you offer to customers that nobody else does for differentiation purposes. Remember, we talked about differentiation among all of the category, whatever space you're in, because you have a reason to believe. So many companies, I've done the same thing on my brands in the past, will go out and they'll do a bunch of research to figure out what's our unique value proposition and what is our reason to believe. And if you hear what I'm talking about, I keep saying our. And what I would suggest to you is that in behavioral sciences, it is very clear that nobody cares at a deep psychological level about your brand. They care about themselves and how your brand can help them. So the problem with traditional brand positioning formats and the way that we build positioning around brands, and actually I would argue that most marketing is telling your customers about you and all the things you can do. Here's the reason to believe you should buy me. And here's our value proposition. And here's how we're different than other people. And you keep talking about yourself versus you talking about how you can help your customers. So the way to bring behavioral sciences into your positioning is flip this on its head. And stop thinking about yourself when you're doing your brand positioning and start messaging and thinking more about your customer. And this is how we do it. So when we think about brand positioning here at Mindstate Group, we think the brand helps you. I probably should have put in capital YOU, you to there is a job to be done. You have a job, your customers have a job that they want you to help them meet and get this job done for them. Because there's a positioning strategy, so that you feel more of a motivation. Your customer, you're the customer, you feel more of this motivation while trying to reach your aspirational goal or an aspirational goal. What I want you to notice between the first one and the second one is where how much more focused that statement on the bottom is about your customer. So your job as a brand architect, or as a marketing research professional, or even as a brand manager, is to figure out these boxes. Now, what I'll tell you is that if you want to understand the jobs to be done for your customers, you should be thinking about the goals of your customers, because all goals are jobs to be done in context. Again, I'm not going to talk about how to do that work. There's lots of videos that I put out there to show you how to do that, because you got to figure out the brand positioning strategy so that you can feel more of a motivation. That's a part of the model, right? So we know how to find out people's motivations. There's only 9 total. So you just have to figure out which of the core motivations are most influential in having people choose your brand in your category, so that you can help them reach their aspirational goal. Again, this is goal theory. So if you've done work around motivational psychology and goals for your customer, you can fill out the vast majority of this. The one thing you probably can't do yet is, what's the positioning strategy? So let me tell you my take on positioning strategy. I believe there's probably about 8 common brand positioning strategies. We could debate this over beer. I'm happy to do that, but I think there's probably 8. And I'll give you some examples here. But I think first, there's like a need strategy. Most companies go down this path because they're trying to fit and they're trying to see the unmet needs of their customers. So a need strategy is just a company can position its products by providing a portfolio of products that cater to the needs of a customer. So Tide has lots of products that help people in the laundry space. If they need softer laundry, Tide has a solution. If they need to have bleach in there and whiter whites, Tide has a solution. So it just looks for unmet needs. You can position your product. You can position your brand about having product quality strategy. So a company can position its brand based upon its product quality, such as the most reliable, the most durable, the most innovative. You can, build positioning around your processes. So a company can position its brand around its unique or superior process of creating or delivering its product. So if you're Starbucks, you can have your baristas out there and they're taking these amazing combinations of flavors, and they have special techniques to make these amazing coffees. You can have a mission strategy like Nike does, where they want to make anybody out there become the athlete that's inside of them. So you can have a mission strategy. You can have a product price strategy. So basically just position your brand as being great at product quality. As having great product costs, right? Low prices. You can have a superiority strategy where you can position your brand as having something around, it solves a problem better than others. So you are superior than others. You can have a purpose strategy, which is, you have something, not just your personal internal mission, but you have a purpose in society. I think Dove's done a great job at that over the last couple of years. They had a great Super Bowl ad this past year. So they're still in this idea of the purpose. And lastly, competitive position. You can just say, we're different than this other company, right? Or this other brand. So what you have to do is do research. Now, we've done this research, right? And so what we do is we literally talk about these brands to customers, and we give them examples. And we say, conceptually, where do you think this brand fits? And let's just say, for instance, after all this work, you come back and you say, okay, I believe that our positioning strategy should be product quality, kind of in the realm of Intel. So what I want you to do is, now you've connected the behavioral drivers to a brand positioning statement. Now, with this brand positioning statement, what you should be able to do is hand this off to an agency, and they can go start creating new positioning. Now, to help them, there is something you can do called linking to a brand archetype. So many of you may not know about brand archetypes. If you want to learn more, there is a great book. It's more the kind of the Bible, if you will, for brand archetypes. It's called The Hero and the Outlaw. There's a few others out there, but generally, the idea of a brand archetype is it's a way of presenting your brand and its values and all your messaging as a personality. And that this personality can connect to people emotionally. And the idea here is that in The Hero and the Outlaw, there's been a lot of work around narrative psychology over time, even brought in anthropology in this space. And basically, the greatest stories ever told have always kind of revolved around these different heroes and outlaws and these archetypes. So whether or not, there's a hero in the story, or maybe there's the sage of a story, or there's a jester of a story. But either way, brands can become these archetypes, and all the associations people have with that archetype of maybe being a hero, or maybe being a rebel, or being a ruler. All those associations, that all the good positive associations, hopefully will overlay to your brand. So it helps your agencies really dig in deep and figure out, how are you going to bring the brand to life? What that reason why you do that is that it helps your customers identify with the brand, and they will trust you because the story your brand is telling fits the stories that they've heard through storytelling their entire lives. So if you fit the brand archetype and you tell that same story, you build and you establish trust with your customers faster, because you just feel naturally intuitive to them. So after you identify your brand archetype, you must align your brand identity and your communications to these archetypes. Again, like I said, there are these 12 archetypes. Really interesting research you can do to figure out, where does your brand stand along this continuum. We certainly do this work. And then once you figure out your brand archetype, well, now you just got to go, okay, well, how are we going to bring it to life for us? Like, how are we going to do the sage archetype different than other people, right? What is our unique expression of the sage? So you're going to look at different voice, you're going to look at colors and fonts and images and symbols and stories that reflect your archetype and resonate with your customers emotionally. But the problem with this, for many people, is they're like, okay, this sounds great. There's these 12 archetypes. You can read an entire book. If you read this book, you can read a whole chapter about the archetype and how to bring it to life. But you may be thinking, but how do I know what archetype to go after? Here is what I believe the vast majorities of brands do wrong. What they do is they go to themselves, they go to the founder story, they go and do kind of a bunch of in-depth research around when the brand first started and who are the characters in the brand, and they try to get authentic. And they say, this is the authenticity of the brand. The brand came from these roots, and it was the rebel in the world, or it was maybe the hero of the world. And what I would suggest is that's no different than what we just said, where you're focused on yourself and not your customers. What I think a much better way of identifying your brand archetype is to find the motivation of your customers, which you just did if you did that research, and you have that in your brand positioning statement that has this behavioral science lens to it. So, as you know from the book, there are 9 core human motivations that drive the vast majority of human behaviors, and people want these desires. So there's a desire for success and power. That's the achievement motivation. There's a desire for freedom or feeling unique. That is the autonomy motivation. There's a desire for acceptance. That is the belonging motivation. There's a desire for skill. That's the competence motivation. There's a desire for control that people have. That would be the empowerment motivation. There's a desire for captivation, which is the engagement motivation. A desire for admiration, which is our esteem. The 8th one is our desire for love, which is called the nurturance motivation. And lastly, our desire for safety, which is our security motivation. So if you did research and figured out which of these 9, you're like, okay, I know that my customers are driven by our competence, and they want to make sure that they have a very competent brand that's going to help them through this journey for them to reach an aspirational goal. Now what you have to do is just map back the motivation they have to the actual archetype. And we've done this work for you. So the hero is actually achievement. Autonomy maps back really nicely to the explorer. Belonging maps back to the everyman. Competence maps back to the sage. Empowerment maps back to the ruler. Engagement maps back to the jester. Esteem oftentimes maps back to the outlaw. Nurturance maps back to the lover. And security maps to the innocent. So if I understand the motivations and the desires of my customer, I just need to go say, okay, so they innately, if they desire, as I go back here, if they desire skill, or they want to know that you are very skilled, then how do I convince you that my brand is a very skilled brand? Well, I'm going to be the sage. That's why you do this. So you make this link in this way. And then all you have to do is connect that brand positioning to the brand archetype. Now, there are great agencies that do it. I love iconicfox.com in Australia. They have these write-ups on each one of these brand identities, or I'm sorry, these brand archetypes. So they have the innocent, the hero, the regular guy. Here's an example of the explorer. And here's, you can tell Jeep is a great explorer brand, or the North Face or Patagonia. And you can tell your brand voice, the brand ethos, the brand message. So there's lots of these out there. But if you were to hand this off to an agency and you said, here's our brand positioning statement with these behavioral science-based attributes that are built into it, and we know that it maps back to the Explorer brand archetype, you could hand them a book and say, check out chapter 6 on the Explorer brand. You could actually go to write-ups that exist right now and say, this is how we want to come to life. We want to focus on freedom and this idea of being exciting and fearless, etc. So once you do that, your last thing you want to do is connect the brand archetype to your brand marketing. So you have the brand archetype, you have all the brand strategy work done, but now what are the words? What are the visuals you're going to use to bring that to life? Now, your agency is going to help you with this, but what I would tell you is that you want to make sure that the words that they link to, or the words that they use, the frames that they use, the way that they position your brand links back to a Mindstate blueprint, Mindstate marketing blueprints. Now, we talk about these blueprints in our book, Marketing to Mindstates, but just realize, you can see down here, if you were to get a blueprint, you would know things like, what's the personality profile that you want to map to? What is the visual inspiration? What are the triggers that you want to consider in your messaging? Not your strategy, your messaging. What's the brand archetype? In this case, as I said, the hero. And there are write-ups that will help customer or help your agency and your brands understand how to map these things to their messaging. So as you can see, it doesn't have to be so complex. First, understand what drives category consideration and brand choice. Then you want to map those drivers to a brand positioning statement. Then you want to map that brand positioning statement to the brand archetype, one of those 12. And then lastly, connect that brand archetype to your brand messaging. So, hey, thank you very much. It's 11:30. I'm happy to stay here and answer questions through the chat for another 5 minutes. I'm here to help you if you want to learn more about this, or even just how to use behavioral science to create fast, smart, actionable insights. Reach out to me at will.leach@mindstategroup.com. We do psychological profiling, consumer and decision understanding, and brand positioning communication insights. So I'll answer any questions. Thank you, Molly. I will share these slides and I'll share the video as well. And you, please, if you would, share it with your friends. Thank you much, everybody. If there are no questions, I will let you go. Have a great weekend and a great next week. Okay, take care.